Brian Whitmore, senior fellow at the Atlantic Council in our nation's capital. Brian, good morning to you. This week, Russia handing back control of Ukraine's heavily contaminated Chernobyl nuclear site. There were reports that Moscow soldiers, they were exposed to radiation, getting sick. What more do we know?
I mean, that's what the Ukrainian officials are telling us, Adrienne. We don't know whether or not that is true, but it certainly does scan with what we know about what the Russian soldiers were doing in the Chernobyl exclusion zone. They were reportedly digging trenches in the Red Forest, which is this forest called the Red Forest because of the color of the trees from the contamination from the radiation right near the Chernobyl. So that it would certainly make sense, but it also would fit in with this regrouping and repositioning of the Russian forces that we're seeing right now. I think the U.S. intelligence is correct that this is not a retreat or withdrawal, it's a repositioning. The Russian war plan did not go according to plan. They failed to achieve their objectives as the war moves into its sixth week. But they're clearly having logistics problems and they're pulling back a bit there.
Well, and it's interesting, pulling back or repositioning. You specialize in Russian affairs. If troops are really repositioning, as being reported by the Pentagon, what is their new strategy?
I think their overall strategy has not changed. Their overall strategy is to control Ukraine one way or another. But the original plan, the original objective was for this blitzkrieg, that the Ukrainians weren't gonna fight, and that Kyiv was going to fall like a house of cards very quickly in a matter of days. That was obviously based on very, very faulty intelligence. And now Russia is is changing its war plan. The troops need to be refitted, resupplied, and regrouped. They're having logistics and supply and morale problems. The reports are that the troops near Kyiv are moving back toward Belarus. And that the war plan is probably going to change now to focus on the Donbas region. Russia really would like to capture Mariupol and establish this land bridge between Russia proper and the occupied Crimean Peninsula. So I think that's going to be the primary focus. But I don't think they're through with Kyiv. Kyiv is still being bombed with long-range artillery. And I think the strategic aim of Russia controlling Kyiv is not, in controlling all of Ukraine, has not changed at all.
So you believe the reports from the Pentagon that they are not scaling back at all in terms of trying to take over the capital?
No, I do believe the reports from the Pentagon. I think those are completely accurate. I mean, again, the ultimate goal here was always the control of Ukraine. Putin does not believe that Ukraine is a real country. He famously said it's not a real country to former U.S. President George W. Bush at the NATO summit in Bucharest back in 2008. In his essay on Ukrainian history, which was filled with errors and inaccuracies last spring, said the same thing. In his speech at the launch of the war, said the same thing. He doesn't believe Ukraine deserves to be a sovereign and independent country, and the strategic aim of subjugating Ukraine is not going to change. What is happening that's been unexpected is that Russia didn't expect such a fight from the Ukrainians.
Right, but could they be repositioning? And actually, we consider the fact that even though Ukraine's army is armed to the teeth with U.S. weapons, they're not necessarily as sophisticated as the Russians, and that's why they've taken them kind of for granted.
I think the Russians did take the Ukrainians for granted, but I would not say the Ukrainian army. I mean, the Ukrainian armed forces are showing us that they're fighting one of the largest armies in the world to a standstill right now, which really says something about the Ukrainians. And yes, they are armed to the teeth with U.S. and Western weapons, but nobody expected them to be able to do this. They're fighting Russia to a draw. Nobody saw this coming. Including I didn't see it coming. I expected the Ukrainians to fight, but I didn't expect them to be this successful. Russia's repositioning because they need to regroup and resupply their troops. They're having morale problems, and they really need to regroup right now.
Yeah, and Ukraine has, as we've reported multiple times, a ton of heart. Brian, thank you for your time with us this morning.
Thank you very much, Adrienne.
Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to click on the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.